All right. Well, I think we can call it a day as far as waiting, and everybody who's filtering in can just join us wherever we are in the conversation. So hello to everybody who's joined us in the past minute or two. Welcome to Life After Marquette. We are so excited that you're here, and thanks for attending. This is an event that is being sponsored by the Career Services Center with support from the Marquette University Counseling Center, from the Marquette University Health Clinic, as well as our employer partner, Northwestern Mutual. So thanks everybody, and can't wait to share all these great tips for what you can expect for life post-graduation. So first, what we're going to do is just some panelist introductions, and then we will have an invocation led by a graduating senior who is among us tonight as a panelist. Hey, Vinny. And then we will jump into the panelist questions. So we're going to do kind of an individual question for each one of the panelists to allow them to share their expertise, and then we will be lobbing questions that will kind of hit two or more perspectives so that we can really get a dialogue going. And then, of course, we will conclude with a Q&A. So if there's anything that's on your mind, feel free to put it in the Q&A box to be at the bottom of your screen there at any point during the conversation today, and we will get to it whether in the middle of the panel or at the end, definitely. So why don't we get started with our introductions. Vinny, would you mind going first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tracy. So my name is Vinny. I am currently a senior right now in the College of Business. I'm studying real estate and finance, graduating in May, which is pretty crazy. And yeah, I'm originally from like Mequon, Wisconsin, so like around 20, 30 minutes north of campus.
Thanks, Vinny. How about you next, Saeng?
Hi, everyone. I'm Saeng. I graduated from Marquette in 2019. I double majored in biochem and political science. Right now, I work as a program coordinator for the Department of Health in Indiana.
Thanks for being here tonight, Saeng. Laura, you can go next.
Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Laura Lubbers. I'm a psychologist here at Marquette's Counseling Center. I actually graduated from Marquette with my PhD, so a while ago, but I'm happy to be back.
Next, let's have Gina.
Oh, there's the button. There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Gina Pagán. I'm a financial advisor and a college unit director with Northwestern Mutual. So we're just down the road. And I also, like Laura, graduated from Marquette, not with my PhD, just undergrad. She's way cooler than me, but I graduated from undergrad in 2011. I was marketing and IT, and I was a theology minor while I was here. So happy to be back.
And Tracy, then you'll close us out with the last panelist introduction.
Hi, I'm Tracy Betz. Do I have to push on something to show my face?
No, you're good. We can see you, we can hear you. You're coming through just fine.
Sorry. I'm the registered dietitian. I've worked at Marquette for over 16 years. I work part-time in the medical clinic, although I was off on a different location than the actual clinic. I've been doing telehealth this year. I have background in a lot of different things with nutrition. I've worked in nursing homes, hospitals, but the most recent job before Marquette was working at an eating disorder facility in Denver. And so I started doing counseling with that. So I specialize in that, but also anything related to wellness and nutrition. Graduated from UW-Madison many years ago. I have my master's degree from Mount Mary in dietetics.
Thanks, everybody. And behind the scenes, we have Jane Ganther. She's one of our career advisors within the Career Services Center. And so she's going to be staffing the chat, keeping an eye on things. And she herself is a graduating student. So hopefully there'll be some things that are useful for her as well. Thanks all for your introductions. Vinny, you can take it away with our brief invocation before we get started with Q&A.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Tracy. So hi, everyone. This will be a brief Jesuit invocation for graduating seniors right now. So gracious and caring God, our source of light, we ask for your almighty hand to be upon us graduates as we are sent forward. With our classes and grading now complete, may we strive towards excellence in all we do. With the applause quieted, may we celebrate and lift up those around us. With the speeches concluded, may our voices rise up to pronounce peace and justice in the world. With the fanfare ceasing, may we find bliss in future endeavors and adventures. With advanced degrees and credentials in hand, may our achievements grow and enrich our communities. As Jesuit educated, may we discover holiness in the midst of life's blessings as well as life's challenges. As our careers commence, may we conduct our life's work with exceptional skill and integrity, inspired to go forth and set the world on fire from this day onward.
Thank you so much, Vinny. And you are just starting off our panel with a bang because you were also the subject of our very first question. So what I know about you is that you're a graduating senior and you were feeling a little bit anxious about what was coming next. And you had a whole bunch of different ideas. You were talking about it with a whole bunch of different people. And now you've kind of come through that anxiousness into maybe a feeling of more peace. So what's it been like for you to go through that process? And how did you go about feeling more at ease with where you are right now?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has been a bit of like a stress-inducing process ever since like going through the internship process and everything, and now finally graduating, looking for jobs. It kind of is that feeling like all these classes and extracurricular activities and just connections that I've made throughout the years are finally coming to this like giant like test at the end of college, and just the work that has been put into internships, and maybe even all like the soul searching and like just sitting alone by myself, and even like some of like the just like suffering experiences that I've grown to like define me and that I've grown from. I think it kind of feels like everything is being like challenged and reckoned now, and that's just like I have to define my career path forever, and as a senior too, I think I've really wanted to like live up my last year and my last couple of months. Just like I think there's a lot of pressures with that to like soak up all the love and all the friendships that I've just established and the people that I've grown to love the last 4 years. So yeah, as I kind of started the process, I was frantically applying to like literally every single job in my majors of real estate and finance, and whether it was like on Indeed or LinkedIn or Handshake, I would even sign up for like all like the small little like recruiting sites that like had just like all these like low key applications, and I must have applied to like honestly like probably around 100 jobs. A lot of them were like easy apply where you just send in your resume, or like there's like a couple of background questions. But I found this like wasn't fruitful at all. And I started, that's when I kind of took that next step and started recruiting counselors and parents, siblings that are kind of in the business field, and friends, professors, just kind of figure out like how I can both combine like my passion, but also like what I've studied the last 4 years. And kind of for me, like I ask a lot of questions, and I reckon like I've always loved psychology and math since I was a kid. And that kind of is why I really wanted to pursue business. I felt like it kind of combined those people skills with some of the analytical skills too. So some of the questions I kind of began asking myself was like, where do I see myself thriving, whether it's like a small or large environment? Like, what are some of my long-term goals? Like where do I kind of see myself heading in my career? And like, what is the most important thing that I would want going forward? And to answer some of those, kind of just really briefly, like I had reputable internships at good companies, but I really wish I had more personal attention. So like, and kind of like a closer hand with higher management that kind of like took a stake in my learning, and I was able to add value, and they were also able to add value. So that was a big thing for me. So I kind of wanted to go like more small after college. And then next, I really loved like being a coach, like having some kind of like coaching capacity, whether it was like coaching my friends, whether they were going through like tough relationships or friendships, or like I was a tutor a lot in high school and a little bit in college. So like tutoring students through academics, and I love coaching or teaching, or like if I like read a new thing about like psychology from a self-help book, or like read a new article on religion or like spirituality, like I love just sharing that, whether it's with family or friends. So just something kind of like in a financial, emotional, or spiritual coaching aspect. I applied to like a bunch of teaching jobs like after college actually too, that were kind of off path from the real estate and finance route too. And third, the last question was like what I really want to like get most, and it was growth. Like I just want to grow as much as I could, and just learn so much, expand my knowledge with people, with finance, or just like management and leadership in general. So kind of after talking through all these things with my loved ones and the incredible like professors and counselors in my life, I was able to come to grips with like some of the things that brought me peace. Were one, I was able to find these things, like these things that I really want, and I'll be able to keep searching for them. And it might or might not be in that certain position, but like either way, I'll be able to better find and make that more worth it. And then two, I think the people that I interview with, I think that's really important because if you kind of tell like whether you like it or not, I think that gives so much insight into like culture and whether you make a good fit. And then three, I think it is a lot harder, I think, getting a job than like an internship per se. So I think all the hard work, I think as seniors, we should just give ourselves a lot more. Like we can reevaluate our goals after that, but like landing that first position, it is a huge accomplishment. Like it really goes to show like all the stress and work we put in. So I think that's really, really important too. So yeah, that's just kind of a little bit about some of the stress that I've felt, but like being able to come to peace with that too.
Thanks so much, Vinny. I appreciated your comments on kind of giving yourself more grace and recognizing the amount of work and forethought and reflection that comes into making any good decision, and knowing that once you make that decision, it's not the last one you'll ever make. It's more just like a step forward in a process rather than an arrival at a destination that you'll spend the rest of your, eternity at. So thanks so much for sharing those thoughts. And Saeng, now directing the next question to you, you have graduated a couple of years ago. And so you've recently been in similar shoes to Vinny. So what advice would you give graduating seniors now, coming from the vantage point of somebody who's 2 years older and perhaps wiser than maybe they are?
Oh my God. I went through a similar experience because I was pre-med and I was going to go to med school. And it was like literally 2 months like before I graduated, I decided I'm not going to go to med school and I'm going to take a gap year off. So having all my friends like making decisions where they want to go to school and like for attending like graduate school, and I'm the only one in a friend group that like not going to like med school. It was very like nerve-wracking, and I'm like feeling lost at the same time. But then again, I had an advisor at Marquette that she was my professor for like 2 years, and I was very close to her, and she's told me that it's okay to like not knowing what you want to do like after graduations. So I like took some time, and like after I graduated, I decided that I wanted to move out to DC. So I moved out to DC like 2 months after I graduated. And then from my experience moving out to DC, it makes me realize that like networking is key to like your success in landing a job. It's not about the experience, the educations, like, I mean, those matter too, but like the personal relationship that you are able to cultivate with people like outside of school and just like talking to people. I think that like developing that relationship with those people is very important to like landing a job. And like, also it gives you the opportunity to like learn from their experience, as well as like they were once in your position, what advice they would give to you as you're like going through this. I feel like I learned a lot from just talking to people and just like randomly message people on LinkedIn. Like I would go to a company page and I'm like, look at like who works there, who I want to talk to, and I just message them. I think like don't be afraid to just like message people and ask and just like introduce yourself. You'll be surprised how many response you get. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Thank you so much. And will you fill us in on what you're doing now? I know you said you work for the Indiana Health Department.
Yeah, so
I know you also have
program
grad school aspirations.
Yeah, so I'm a program coordinator and I work under the Ryan White HIV/AIDS services. So we're funded by HRSA, so the federal government. And basically what I do is I implement different HIV strategies and programmatic services that the government want us to provide to the community. So I basically like oversee those programmatic strategies and making sure that different nonprofit that we are funding are carrying out that programmatic capacity to like the best ability, and people are accessing those services. So that's what I'm doing before I go back to school this summer. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Saeng. I really appreciate that. And turning over to you, Dr. Lubbers. So now you've heard, two different perspectives of a current student, a recent grad, and coming from the vantage point of somebody who's an expert in mental health. How are they examples of what to expect when you're going through a big transition? And coming from your perspective, what recommendations or advice will you have for students who are going through something similar?
Yeah, I think that what Vinny and Saeng talked about is just so common, right? Like if you think back to maybe how you all felt coming into college and, leaving high school, and that transition can be super hard. And then, here you are coming through another transition, and transitions and change in general are tricky. They're exciting, but they're also really kind of nerve-wracking. And I think what I see, you know, in my work when I meet with students around these transition is there's so much pressure to like have everything figured out. Like I need to have my dream job right away. And, you know, I need to have everything figured out in my future. And so I think sometimes just even challenging that mentality of like, where do these ideas come from? Why are we feeling like right out of college, you know, you have to have your dream job or you have to know every single answer of what you're going to do, and just slowing it down, right? So kind of saying like, let's plan one step at a time, one decision at a time. I tell students a lot, like having that, you know, kind of like that grace Vinny was talking about, like having self-compassion with ourselves around, you don't have to, you know, be super excited or you don't have to be really nervous. Like you can feel however you feel, and that just kind of normalizing that change is difficult and comes with challenges. I think that's a little bit lacking in transition. Sometimes we have this expectation that we're only supposed to feel good, or you know, that the transition should only take a few weeks and then we're supposed to be completely well adjusted and perfect. And when you have that mentality, it's hard, because then when you don't feel that way, then that self-judgment creeps in of like, or that comparison, right? Of, you know, saying when you were talking about, gosh, just feeling so triggered by like friends, and I hear that by far, like the number one concern that like graduating seniors have is like, people are only talking about, oh, I landed a job, or, you know, I got this awesome thing. We're not hearing from so many of our students that are like, I'm still looking, or, you know, I don't know what I'm doing after graduation. So really trying to not fall into that comparison trap of like, my journey should look like this person's journey. Realizing it's normal to feel, you know, unsure about, gosh, everyone else has this, what am I supposed to do? But then again, like if I can give one vein, we want that self-compassion to come back in of, you know, it's okay for my journey to look different. Everyone is on a different sort of path in that. So I think that that's something that I would want to definitely highlight for you all, is try not to compare, really normalizing that change and transitions take time, that you're allowed to change your mind on, you know, and figure it out sort of as you go. And then I'm sure that people will put questions in the chat, and maybe I can give some more kind of targeted tips, but main things that help a lot with transition. So trying to embrace like a new identity. So, you know, you may not be the same exact person that you were in college, and like, what is that new identity going to look like? What do you want that to look like? Is it okay if that's different? So kind of maybe even doing some self-reflection around your next chapter and what you want that to look like. That can be really helpful with just picturing yourself in the new environment or the new identity. Prioritizing self-care. So truly thinking about what works for you, what helped get you through college, what helps get you through hard times, and really picking like 2 or 3 things that really do help, like, and sticking with those. So that could be, you know, maybe eating healthy or working out or staying connected with friends or family, or, you know, any self-care thing, you know, journaling, or, you know, structuring in 20 minutes of Netflix time for yourself, whatever it may be. You really want to hang on to the self-care stuff when going through these things, because it can bring a sense of normalcy. And then what I did love a lot about Vinny and Saeng stories is that, you know, you both sought support, right? Be it through people at Marquette or others in your life. That is probably, aside from self-compassion, the number one thing you can do to help yourself. When we keep the secrets that transitions are hard, or, you know, I'm struggling, that just adds to the suffering. When we normalize that and we vocalize that and we reach out to people that can help lift you up, or help celebrate whatever is going on, that can feel just so much more supportive. So staying in touch with friends or family, you know, connecting with mentors, advisors, reaching out for therapy, all of those things can be super helpful. And I always say, like, better to reach out early than when, you know, you're really even needing it. So.
Thanks so much for that. There's lots of great nuggets in there, and I could see Saeng and Vinny nodding their heads. So I feel like a lot of that must have touched on their experiences too. So thanks for the mental health perspective. And Tracy, you're coming from the physical health and nutrition perspective. So what are some of the key health and nutrition concepts that might be helpful for graduating seniors to know so that they can come into their new post-grad lives as healthy, happy, and high functioning as they can be?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. A lot of the points that Vinny, you all made, kind of that also ties into like the self-care, but also grace and patience and passion for yourself. Part of that is eating well. And the thing about what I always tell people, and especially once you're graduating and on your own and getting a job, is eating well. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's a process. I always tell people it's kind of like a practice. I don't know if anyone's gone to a yoga class, they always talk about yoga is your practice. You don't compare it to others because everyone's in a different spot, but you keep practicing it. And it's not like there's an end to your yoga practice and then you're done and everything's perfect. And I kind of like to compare eating to that eating doesn't have to be perfect. And if you're striving for that and that's consuming your life, then that's where maybe there's a red flag and that's not a good thing. But the flip side of that is we do have to prioritize eating well and taking that time. So part of that self-care is taking the time to kind of plan ahead what you're going to do. If someone's winging and they want to eat well, but they're winging it and they're not ever thinking about food or what's planning anything, that necessarily isn't going to go as well either. So I always talk to people about planning meals, making grocery lists, and thinking of it as a positive, though. It's a skill that most people need to learn, not always if they have someone that's cooking for them, but a lot of people do, and it's always good to, you never know. So, kind of putting effort into that and looking at it as a positive, like looking at recipes or teaching yourself certain things that you need to do for basic cooking, and then it becomes easier and a more enjoyable and normal activity. And then remembering that eating well with these stressful transitions helps. Obviously, you have to sustain your energy level, mental clarity. The food is the fuel for the brain. So making sure that you are taking care of yourself with the food to be able to go through interviews and the stress and moves potentially to other states and all those type of things. But knowing that it's a continual practice, it's never perfect. You maintain flexibility with yourself and your ideas of what eating well is. All foods can fit into a healthy plan. There's no special or specific or restrictive diet that you should be following. Positive relationship with food. That's you've got to eat the rest of your life. So we've got to, might as well make it a good, positive, fun, happy thing. So.
Thanks so much, Tracy. That's, I think, some really, really good advice. And to round out the sort of health category, we've got mental, we've got physical, and then we've got financial with Gina. So finances are on a lot of seniors' minds because a lot of them might be going into their first full-time role. They might be starting to pay off student loans or planning for future education that they need to save for, or even just other major purchases. So what are some of the general recommendations that you have for new grads who are learning to manage their finances?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, you just mentioned a ton of things, all right? And when you go from, working at the brew or bartending at cabs to full-time paycheck, it can be pretty overwhelming. You have more money than you've ever had in your life. And it's figuring, okay, well, what do you do with it? And, one of the first things I tell people is just take the time to understand your compensation package and your benefits, right? And that's gonna look a little different for everyone. Some of you might stay on your parents' health insurance until you're 26. Some of you might pop off right away. Some people might have matches in their retirement accounts. Others might not. All different companies have different things. But what you want to do is really just make sure you take the time to understand it, which can sometimes be a big ask because you're starting this new role. They throw you into a PowerPoint for half an hour when you're also trying to learn how to do your new job and taking all these different things in. And yeah, they throw you in a room for half an hour and expect you to make your benefit elections by the end of 2 weeks, right? And so we see that all the time, and it is a lot to take in. But I would certainly recommend just taking the time to really run through that, sit down with someone that you trust that might have a little bit more familiarity with it, whether it's a friend or relative, might be HR, might be a financial advisor, just sit down with someone that can help you run through it and talk about, hey, these are the things that are important at your stage versus, these are things that might not be as applicable right now. You don't need to sign up for, et cetera. So, certainly just taking the time, because your benefits are part of your overall compensation. Like, that's part of the reason why your employer is like retaining you. So you certainly want to maximize on that. And then, when you get that first paycheck, figuring out like how to budget it, figuring out understanding taxes, how that plays into account. I do a lot of these seminars for, graduating Marquette seniors, and I always kind of reiterate, like, yeah, you get a new job, you might be, making 60 grand a year. Like, that doesn't mean you're making 5,000 a month. It means you're making like 3.5, because you got to pay taxes and benefits, right? And starting to understand like how those different pieces all work. So, but yeah, and big things, right away is really just understanding your benefits, having a plan, budgeting and understanding, like, especially if you're moving, this comes up with graduating seniors a lot, is like, hey, I'm looking at job offers in Tacoma versus Anaheim. Like, what does that look like? How does that change? Like, how do I pick a place to live and to rent? And, so understanding cost of living for wherever you end up, and making sure you're budgeting around that. You're not going to know exactly what everything looks like until you like are actually there and living for a month. So like, be patient with yourself. Like, I know part of the theme today is like giving yourself some grace. Like, it's okay if you don't know everything right away, but you do want to at least have some sort of plan so that, you're not off track. Because one of the other things I see happen a lot is that, you go from, part-time paycheck to full-time paycheck, and it's like, people are out there just like making it rain, like you're picking up your friend's bar tabs, right? And then I meet them like a year later, and we're trying to kind of correct some habits, right? And so, have a plan right away. And, the thing about budgets is that they're easy to put together, they're hard to execute. And, similar to what, Tracy was talking about with health, like it's okay if you don't get it all right. It's just like, if you don't eat the right thing every day, like, you can give yourself some patience. And that's true with your budget too. If you're spend a little bit more on your Amazon this month, and that's okay, you can still make adjustments the next month. But having a plan is important around your budget, having a plan around your student loans, and that can be a pretty big piece for folks, especially coming out of private school, right? Some of you guys, that might be a reality for your for what your finances look like. And it doesn't have to be a scary thing. It does need to be managed, right? So so whatever your situation is, taking the time to really think through it, understanding your benefits, taxes, budget, and then positioning yourself the best you can at the beginning, and then reevaluating after 6 months, because life is going to change, and you're going to get a little better sense of like kind of how cash flow is month in and month out, and you can continue to adjust. That's a ton of stuff, and we could spend 30 minutes on each of those bullet points, but some general recommendations.
Thank you so much, Gina. I know we have some more specific questions coming down the line, so I'm excited to hear what your opinion is on all of that. I'm just noticing, I'm kind of struck by how, even though we have 3 different people from lots of different corners of areas of expertise, it seems like there's some really strong threads that are uniting all of your advice, which is be gentle with yourself, and also try to be as intentional as you can to set yourself up to be successful with whatever it might be. And I think that even mimics in some ways Saeng and Vinny's stories too. So I think that's just kind of cool how all of that is somewhat united. So this next question is for Vinny and Saeng. So just really briefly, I'm wondering if you could just fill us in. What are some of the main career concerns that you hear from people currently, Vinny, and maybe your peers, and then Saeng, maybe that you heard when you were graduating?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think a lot of questions that I was asking myself, and even the people that I'm living with, and just extracurricularly that we're just planning for the future. Like, will I be stuck in this career forever? I think that's such a big thing. Like, can I get out? Like, are there opportunities outside of this? And then also like finding purpose in that. Like, I think a lot of people, there's like this giant fear about like especially in business, I think there's like this like 2 or 3 year like grind. You have to get through the grind, like, and like, how real is that? Like, what does that actually look like if you break it down? Like, so I think that's the big one, is like finding that purpose, like adding value. Like, is it going to be horrible like right after college? Like, how much changes with that? And then kind of like, will I learn the things I need to know to kind of meet those like long-term career goals and get the knowledge that I think all of us are hoping for and looking for. So those are kind of three big ones right now.
How about you?
Yeah, for me, I think a lot of my friends that like some of the concern that I've heard is that will I be successful? Like, will I be successful enough to land a positions that I could like work for a long time and like sustain like the lifestyle that I want, and also like will I even get the opportunity to like work for an organization or some like company that like will allow me to fulfill that passion? I think it's like that common like thread of like, will I be happy in the job that I work on? So I think that is like something that, I mean, I struggle a lot too when I first graduated, because I was good at science, but then like when I look into it, I'm like, do I really want to spend like the rest of my life working in a hospital? And then I come to a realization that like I'm like not like into that like lifestyle that I want. So but then like again, like as I said earlier, that talking to people, just like learning from the experiences that these people have been into, and like the field that like you may have not even heard of that even existed. Like for me, I know like when I moved to DC, it was like a whole new world. Like I met some of the people and like I've learned about like different job opportunities that I didn't even know existed. Like I met a guy who was like the trade negotiator for the US, and I like didn't even know like that was like a thing. But again, he like shared and like told story about his life where like he was in business and then he did not like it. So he decided to like go into like, he worked for USDA. And then he just kind of like climbed up the ladder. But like the reason that he liked the job was because he was able to talk to people, like that, like people skill, and just like getting to travel to like different countries and just like seeing different culture was something that he liked more than like working in like a 9-to-5 jobs. So again, like talking to people, like literally like try to learn from them, and like just taking like every opportunities as a learning experience is what I would say like would be my best advice. Yeah.
Thank you. And this is my chance to make a shameless plug for the Career Services Center, which obviously I represent since I work there as a career counselor. But I think it's just really important for graduating students to know that we do offer lifetime services to alumni. So whether you are graduating in, 6 weeks like Vinny is, or if you're, even if it's 6 weeks after graduation or 6 years after graduation, we are here to help you figure it out. And so having questions about what are your values, what are your skills, where can you match those with a fit in an industry? Are you thinking about graduate school? How do you write a personal statement or try to negotiate a salary? Those are all things that we are ready and able and very excited to help you with. So please don't hesitate to reach out, even if it's just sending us an email or calling the office to make an appointment to meet with a career counselor. And you will have access to Handshake, which is where you can search for jobs and internships specifically for Marquette students as well. So just know that in the theme of seeking resources, we are one, and we will be very happy to assist you moving forward, even as an alum, as a Golden Eagle alum, I guess. I was going to say when you're not a Golden Eagle anymore, but I think the whole vibe is that you're always a Golden Eagle. So, so that was my little plug for my own office. But then this next question is for Laura and Saeng. So Saeng, you mentioned that you moved to DC and then you moved again back to Indiana. And Laura, you were talking about the importance of finding and developing support networks. So can you guys talk a little bit about how can you build support networks that might be similar to the ones that students might have had in college, especially when you're maybe moving to a new city and starting from scratch?
Do you want to talk about your experience first, Saeng?
I can go, yeah. I was lucky because one of my best friends from college moved out with me, so we were roommates. But building off of that, she has friends. I had friends that were like going to school in DC, so we kind of like make like friends through mutual friends, and then like our mutual friends has other friends, so we kind of like expand our network that way. Because I would say it is a little bit harder to meet new people when you are like outside of college, because I feel like everyone has that friend group that they always like turn to when they, when you're out of college. But I think it's about like just like talking and make yourself like be open just to like meet new people. That I feel like everyone, like you have to put yourself in a position where I'm new into the city, but I'm looking to like learn more about the city and make new friends. And I think as you do that, there will be like people that are willing to talk to you, and just like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. I think that that is challenging sometimes. Even students experience that while in college. Like it's really hard to find my group or make friends. Especially like social anxiety is pretty common, like anxiety about even just being with people when these COVID times is kind of hard. Like we've been meeting with students around that, like, gosh, like what I have all of a sudden this anxiety about what people think of me. And like, that's hard. So I think first it's like, if you are dealing with any of that anxiety too, knowing it's normal, everyone's usually thinking the same thing. If you are there for you're moving for a job or an internship or something like that, like in the workplace is often a great place to either make friends or find out about the surroundings, like what else is available in order to meet people, like whether that be, young adult sort of groups where they go to different places each week, or sports leagues, or just kind of shared interest groups. I think that's a really common way lately, but sometimes that's hard to find out. Like I know Milwaukee has a bunch of them, but if you're moving to a new place, it's like, how do you know what that is? So I think just being like really vocal in your job around, hey, I'm new, what do people do here? How do you, meet people? Like, I think it's always great to ask coworkers. Sometimes even workplaces have, different groups around interest areas. That's always good. And then I think this is a hard one to force yourself to do if you're maybe not super extroverted or if it's a hard skill. But I do think Saeng makes a really good point in that sometimes we will wait for other people to ask us to do things, or our comfort zone is kind of waiting for those invitations for friendships. And then when they don't come, we may get in our own head of like, well, I'm not well liked, or which limits you even further. So I always tell students to just try to set a goal, to put yourself out of your comfort zone and ask someone to do something, or just talk to someone, or, invite yourself along, like, you know what I mean? Like try to put yourself out of your comfort zone to try to make those connections versus waiting for them to come to you, because people aren't going to read your mind and know. They may not know you live alone, or may not know you're new, or not, partnered or unpartnered. Like people don't make those assumptions. So, or they will make assumptions and they could be totally wrong. So we want to have you put yourself out there so that you can build the relationships that you want, versus kind of sitting back where it might not happen. So anyways, you can be proactive about that, I think is the best way to like lead you towards that success.
Thanks for both of those perspectives. I think really crucial points. Another idea that I was thinking of as you guys were talking was just like, think about what your hobbies are and try to find people who do similar things, or even think about hobbies you wish you had, or that you like to have as a kid. Even like if you used to be a crafty kid, like try to go find a pottery evening or something like that. If you really like to be outside, there's probably a hiking group that might go to places in and around your city or wherever it is that you're living. And from those shared interests could maybe be some also shared values, and maybe friendships could arise from that too. So those were just a couple ideas I wanted to throw out there. So thank you both for those responses. Next question is for Tracy. So we had some questions about how we can differentiate between kind of fad diets and what truly is healthy and sustainable eating, as you said, with the lifespan perspective. Specifically, we had some questions about intermittent fasting, like do you need to take vitamins every day? Is keto a thing? What's your perspective on that as a registered dietitian?
Yeah, so to just quick kind of talk about the difference between a fad diet and just general healthy eating. So a couple things to look at with a diet that someone is promoting or whatever is usually a fad diet's more extreme. So a lot of more extreme changes from what we would consider just intuitive or normal eating. Usually they're pretty depriving. I mean, if the point is to lose weight, you're going to feel deprived because you're going to be under eating than compared to what you normally need. It's something that's really hard to do long term, a fad diet, because it is typically very different than what the majority of society is doing. And so then what happens is it's hard to sustain that if you're doing something so different than your family or friends, partner, whatever. If something is saying to eliminate whole food groups, that's typically a fad diet. I mean, I never would promote completely eliminating anything. That just kind of sets up feeling deprived and potentially, thinking more about it and wanting it more. And then also psychologically, fad diets tend to a lot of the time be psychologically damaging, and where it's setting you up feeling really guilty and bad, and maybe some more drastic behaviors, over exercising or trying to purge or, get rid of food because you felt like you ate too much because it wasn't on the diet. So a lot of those things would be typical of a fad diet. So healthy eating, so if someone is just thinking they want to make some positive changes, or they want to make sure that they're getting what they need when it comes to food and nutrition, because we know there are certain things in food that we need to be healthy and have our body functioning right and fight illness and cancer and things like that. So, if you want to change things a little bit, small changes over time, looking at maybe, like I always say, a positive goal that is always an ongoing goal, even for myself, is, fruits and vegetables. We know, why are fruit and vegetables good? They're good because they're nutrient dense, meaning they have vitamins and minerals and fiber and those things that we need for our physiology to work and work well and fight off illness and cancer. So obviously setting a goal to increase, I'm going to try to get more fruits and vegetables. It's flexible. Always have to maintain that flexibility. Something you practice every day, which we talked about, and is ongoing, and something that you're looking at that it's going to be a lifestyle change. No foods are completely eliminated, kind of goes along with the food group thing, but I really don't like someone to say, I'm not going to eat any sugar, or I'm not eating bread or whatever, because then it kind of sets you up for actually wanting it more sometimes. You can make shifts and try to, and balance your plate a little better with the different food groups, looking at, being aware of portion sizes, hunger and fullness. And looking at more the big picture. So not being so acutely aware of each thing we do every day. I always tell people, tomorrow's a new day. We're always setting positive goals, but it's ongoing, and that we aren't going to try to compensate for what happened yesterday or worry about what's happening tomorrow. Just keep, plugging away at healthy eating. Intermittent fasting, it's a very trendy thing right now. I personally do not like it because, again, it just kind of sets this very rigid idea. And yeah, if you jam in everything you eat within 8 hours in a day, the chances are you will eat less because you're eating only within 8 hours of a day. But again, it just kind of sets up all the potential negative behaviors and negative psychological consequences. So I don't really promote intermittent fasting. If someone, I definitely believe people need to be eating at least 3, if not more, 3 to 5 times a day, not going any longer than 4 or 5 hours without eating, because that's how we feel nourished and balanced and don't have extreme behaviors. So I would say intermittent fasting is not something you need to do. What else did you ask me about? Like vitamins and minerals.
Yeah, like
supplements.
Be taking a daily vitamin, or supplements.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay to take a multivitamin, but I truly just promote real food, and we all need, like I said, I mean, be patient with yourself, but it's always good to learn the fruits and vegetables. We still don't know everything that's in those, that's providing us what we need, all the micronutrients and things like that. So it's better to get it from food, but it also doesn't hurt to take like a daily multivitamin, maybe some vitamin C, for, immunity, vitamin D, potentially. That is a fat soluble vitamin. We store it, but, it seems like the overwhelming consensus is that most people probably aren't getting enough and producing enough that they need because the sun doesn't shine enough. We're not in the sun enough, but no. So moderation, again, talking to someone about it, but not overloading on supplements, and certainly not protein powder or things like that. Most people don't need that. So.
Thank you. Lots of great detail there. And our next question, I sort of was trying to smooth these questions together by thinking about, we're talking about food, and now we're talking about budgets, which you need a budget for your groceries, right? So Gina, this one's for you. Can you just kind of give us some fundamentals about budgeting. How do you build one? How do you maintain one for groceries and other typical expenses that students are going to be having month to month?
Yeah, totally. So there are lots of different ways to put together budgets. We've got some folks that are like all about the Excel spreadsheets. There's a ton of apps that you can use. Some of them are free, like Mint. Others are paid for that are a little bit more specific, but like I have a lot of friends and clients that love them, like YNAB, You Need a Budget, right? There's a lot of things that are out there, and so plenty of tools. Like I have all sorts of budgets that I'm happy to share if people want like PDFs and things. I've got all sorts of stuff. So, but it is important just to have one. Like I was saying earlier, like they're easy to put together, but they're hard to execute. So, step one is to find a tool that works for you for building the budget out. Apps, Excel, paper and pen, like whatever works for you. And in terms of like just like a very tactical like rule of thumb, a good philosophy to subscribe to as far as budgeting is concerned is the 60-20-20 rule. So what that means is 60% of your income, or your net income after taxes, what is the bank account? 60% of that is going toward fixed expenses, right? Your rent or mortgage, utilities, student loans, things that are predictable expenses month in and month out, like you gotta pay them, right? So 60% of your income going toward that. Kind of quick side rule on that, you should aim to have about 30 to 35% of your income going toward your housing, like for rent. All right. So people ask all the time, like, what should I be spending on rent? Do I need to get a roommate? Just kind of a side note. But so yeah, 60% toward fixed expenses, 20% toward your discretionary expenses. So it's like your fun money, right? Like going out to eat, hanging out with your friends, going to burger games, like however you are entertained, right? 20% going toward the fun stuff. And there might be some more of like kind of your variable expenses in there as well. And then the other 20% is going toward savings, right? And when you're talking about savings and saving that 20% of your income, that can feel like a big number, but the key there is that you're spreading that 20% over a different time horizon. So it's not just 20% that's just like going into your emergency fund and like you're just pounding and putting a ton of money in the bank, but also like making sure you're leveraging your 401k or your 403b at work, putting in enough to get the full match from your employer. Again, going out to maxing out your benefits and compensation we mentioned before. Saving for your short-term goals, saving for long-term retirement, and then saving for your midterm goals as well. There's you want to make sure you do have a good base first. Like I need people every day that are like, they want to talk about just building investment accounts, which is all well and good and is something that's important for people's financial futures and building out their portfolios. But we do need to have a good base, especially right out of graduation, like making sure that emergency fund is there and building that 3 to 6 months of expenses just in the bank. If life throws you a curveball, you have something to fall back on. Nothing like 2020 to underscore the need for having a backup plan, right? And sometimes things are out of control. So making sure you have that, making sure you have things like saving in your budget, right? Having it as a line item, because saving money is you're paying yourself first, right? So again, quick things, but find the tool that works for you, build it out, track it, and then using that 60-20-20 rule.
I'm sure that many people like myself were writing down 60-20-20, and we're all going to go onto our phone calculators later and be like, so am I okay, or do I need to adjust something?
Yeah, totally.
That's exactly what I'm going to do when this event is over. So thanks for that detail. This next question is for you, Laura. So knowing that a lot of students who may have been accessing mental health services have been doing it through the Marquette Counseling Center, which is obviously a resource that is for current students, can you just kind of explain, how do you find a therapist or a mental health provider when you're just on your own? Or are there resources that Marquette has that can help with even graduated students?
Yeah, definitely. So our services are for current students, but it's not unusual for like alums to call and ask like about referrals in areas, or like ask that exact question, like, hey, I moved here, how do I find a therapist? And we can certainly help troubleshoot that over the phone. So, you can always call and reach out to us if you have that question. Otherwise, if you do have insurance benefit from a place of employment, that's usually the best place to start. You can call your insurance company or look online, and they will let you know a list of licensed providers in the area that can provide therapy. Psychology Today is a huge and wonderful resource, so that you can also search by insurance or by type of provider, in case you're looking for a specific match. So I'll often, even if I'm helping someone with referral, I'll even pull that up and look myself. Again, those are usually based on if you're using insurance. Therapy can be expensive otherwise. So if you're looking for low cost options, I would often look for low cost or sliding fee agencies. A simple Google search can kind of bring those up. Most universities also have training programs or training clinics, which you can get excellent services at. So looking up those, they usually are very low cost for community members. And then you can always ask to, like, say you find a provider, they look great, they seem like they'd be a wonderful match. You can, and you don't have maybe insurance that matches with them, you can always ask if they offer self-pay or sliding fee scales. Most do. So you can always ask that, and oftentimes they can work within that budget. And sort of like Gina was saying, like, even working that into your budget. So sometimes there even is a copay with your insurance. And so kind of even planning for that, I know I'm going to want, weekly therapy, or I know I'm going to want to just touch base with someone monthly, and kind of budgeting that in. And I always tell students too, so therapy can be based on what you need or what you want. So it may not be, super affordable to do it weekly, but can you do it bi-weekly? Is maybe even meeting with someone once a month helpful? So really kind of getting that bang for your buck. Like, you really can, you get to decide with whoever you're meeting how much you can afford to and how much you want and need to meet. So just kind of taking that into consideration and really being an advocate for yourself and sort of taking charge of like what you think you want. But in terms of just logistics of finding one, I would say, Psychology Today, going on websites. Most people have really good websites these days, or just giving us a call at the counseling center if you need a little bit of extra help with that.
Great tips all around. Tracy, this next question is for you. So you were talking about nutrient-dense foods, fruits and veggies and all that stuff. And one of the questions that came up was just, sometimes you're in a rush, you need to have a quick meal, you want it to also be nourishing. What are some of those pantry staples or even frozen items that are more convenient, but then also can be satisfying and keep you nourished for whatever it is that your life is throwing at you?
Yeah, so just from the frozen perspective, frozen vegetables have the same and good nutrition as like fresh. It's just more of a taste difference, but it's certainly something. I know the fresh produce can be hard to, use and keep going and plan, but that's kind of where that planning comes in, always doing a mix of things. And it, like I said, never has to be perfect, but, or what I always do, if you're not feeling like cooking vegetables, but you want to get a vegetable, just carrot sticks, or raw veggies with dip, or, throwing together a salad, or roasting a bunch of vegetables ahead of time and then having them throughout the week. The other trick I do, one of my favorite meals to make still at this day and age, even I've been making it since college myself, is like spaghetti and meat sauce. And then, but the one thing with spaghetti or noodles or pasta or something you're cooking, you can just throw vegetables in the water while it's cooking and have it cooked, and then mix in veggies with whatever sauce. Or like I make for my kids, they don't always love the peas, but you could put in any vegetable, but it's like some easy, it was like a 5-ingredient, really inexpensive, quick. You cut up ham, like a ham steak, you boil pasta, and then you dump peas in the ham in it like the last 3 minutes. And then you make like this lemon vinaigrette with Parmesan cheese, which is really good, but you could totally just put whatever on it you wanted that was easier. And there's always tricks. It takes a little bit of planning, or I always say for lunch too, like my emergency lunch, if I was like, oh my gosh, there's nothing, cheese, crackers, and an apple, some almonds, whatever, just grab things, but like thinking in those food groups just to feel like it's a little more balanced instead of just going to the vending machine and getting chips or whatever. Trying to think what else. There's a lot of stir fries are a really good way too to get in a lot of vegetables, but you mix it in, there's sauce, there's meat, it's rice, it tastes really good. So kind of those mixed meals, tortillas and tacos, like canned, black beans with cheese or salsa, whatever with tortillas. That's an easy, quick, almost pantry meal out of the pantry. So just the other thing is nowadays with I'm a Pinterest person, it might age me, but like looking at, you can Google anything and get a recipe. You can get 1,000 recipes. You can type in, broccoli and 100 things will come up. You can type in, chicken with tomatoes or whatever is one of your favorite things. And literally, have YouTube videos, Google recipes. So, there's a lot of more resources. You don't have to go to the bookstore and buy a cookbook anymore. Or tap into your parents or friends that cook and have ideas. It's just kind of taking the time and thinking about it more and enjoying it too. People, once they get over the hump of like, oh, I don't know how to cook, or I don't feel like cooking, once you get into it, you can do it. But not you aren't going to do it every night, and that's okay too. Busy, tired. The other thing, which it's taken me a really long time to embrace, is, and I have the luxury of working part-time, so I do have more time, but is prepping ahead of time. I'm always like, nope, I'm just going to make dinner when it's dinner. Like, I don't want to prep, but prepping, man, that's, making something for later or later in the week on Sunday, making a soup or a chili or something like that ahead of time, for anticipating, like, oh, I have meetings or this or that, and I want to, I'm not going to feel like anything. Making, then you have it in the fridge. Leftovers too are always a good thing. So all you have to do is heat that up in a microwave. So
lots of good tips there. If I could add one other one, if you have access to like a space, like if you have an office or even just like a cabinet in your office, it's not a bad idea to just keep some snacks or food in there, because there will come a day where you will forget your lunch and you won't have time and you won't want to feel like you won't want to order something. And so even just having like an applesauce pack and a granola bar, those things can get you through till you can make a run to grab a sandwich or whatever. I offer that advice because I personally use it a fair bit. I may or may not have found a chocolate bar from pre-pandemic in my office. May or may not have eaten it. But that's just a little tip that I picked up in my professional life that I wanted to throw out there in regards to kind of the meal planning and stuff. We are at just about 6 o'clock now, so I want to make sure that we open the floor for Q&A, and it looks like we have had one come in from Jessie. Hi, Jessie. And this question is particularly for Saeng. So she's wondering about what your experience was like moving to what your experience was like moving to DC. Did you know anybody in the area already? Did you already have a job before you moved there?
Okay. So first, questions about initial experience. I think DC is a good place for young people to like move there after college, specifically if you're interested in policy, because I know that like working on the Hill, like you can get internship, and oftentimes if you are able to score an internship there, they will most likely promote you to like a full-time position. Like I know my roommate did that, and I know a few people that did that as well. And it's also like a younger city. Like I didn't have a hard time making friends because people would go to like happy hours. Sorry, that's my dog. It's going crazy. But I would go to like happy hours and then like meet new people as I was like, out making friends. And in terms of having a job, I did not have a job when I moved out to DC. And I think my parents were a little bit concerned when I moved out there. But I'm also lucky because I don't have student loans. So that was something I was able to like wait it out, because I factored it in. I don't have student loan that I have to like worry about. But also, that being said, I was getting interviews. So I was like interviewing with a bunch of companies and organizations before I moved out to DC. And when I was out in DC, I was also, again, very active with my networking. Like I was messaging a bunch of people on LinkedIn and just people from like different companies. And I was like meeting people when they were like referring me to different job positions and stuff like that. So I think like just utilizing like your resources. Like I know we have an alumni network in DC as well. And I know they're very active in the DC area. So if you're interested in moving out, I would suggest like reaching out to them and see what is out there, because I know right now it's sort of slow in DC, and a lot of people that were out working in DC are actually like working remotely from home because of COVID right now. So checking out like the area and like asking people that are in the area to make sure that like the job market is so like as active as I was like there back in like last year. So yeah.
Thanks for answering that question. Before I go to the next one, which came through in the chat, just wanted to call attention that Jane did place the link for the assessment for this program in the chat. So all of the attendees, please do click that link and take the survey. It'll help us improve our future programming and just help us learn how to serve you better. So take a look at that when you have the time, and I will be sending that out to you via email tomorrow. So if you don't have the moment now, no worries. So a next question came through from Lena, who's asking, Gina or anybody else wants to answer this, could you talk a little bit about financing yourself in between graduation and when you find a job? Any advice for that, knowing in particular that in some cities that you're moving to, you typically do need to already have a job in order to afford to live there. So basically, how do you make it in that in-between before you get that role?
Yeah, totally fair question, and very real right now, especially like kind of given what's going on in the pandemic. I guess one thing I will say kind of on to the back half of that question, like, hey, I know it's going to be, it's easier to network and meet people once I'm already out there. I will say that I won't entirely call it a false narrative, but I will say that is easier to do now than it was 12 months ago, because, to Saeng's point a second ago, like so many more people are working from home, right? And so now that, the COVID environment and, being in the kind of the business world, the corporate sector, like people that weren't accustomed to video conference and technology have been forced to become that way, right? And it really has expanded people's thinking on, how to, build relationships and continue to network. And so if you're thinking about making a move somewhere and you're like, okay, hey, I want to go to XYZ company in Cincinnati or Tampa or wherever, like it'll be easier now to start talking to folks in those places, setting up video conferences. You got to put yourself out there, which is not always easy, right? You got to put yourself out there, take some courage. But I think you're better positioned now to find jobs in other places without necessarily having to move out there. Because that was also very true with like New York and like the certain industries, right? So I think there's a little bit more accessibility now just because of the environment that we're in and being able to set up those video conferences and have those conversations. So I guess that's one thing, which is not really money related, but just, I guess approaching the job market. On the financing side, kind of going back to the budget, like if you're like, hey, no job, trying to figure out what my next step is going to be. And there's 2 points to it, right? Because if you know that, I meet a lot of people and it's like, hey, I am not working until September 15th. That's when my job starts. Okay, September 15th. Okay, 2 weeks later is when I'm gonna get my first paycheck. So I'm not gonna have income until 3 months from now. And so it's one thing if you know, okay, hey, here's what my deadline is. You really can budget that out, right? Saying, okay, this is what my expenses are gonna be like month to month. What do I have in the bank? Do I need to work hourly for 3 months? Something that just to kind of make ends meet, through the summer, don't be too prideful to, work at some, hourly gig while you're getting ready to go onto the, to your next full-time role, because the last thing you want to do is put it all on a credit card, right? So credit is important, right? Like credit cards are not credit is not something to be feared. Like it's a tool, but it's also like not free money, right? So, because I've clients, I've friends that put a bunch of money on a credit card between graduation and their job starting, and then they start their job like digging themselves out of a hole, right? So my advice would be to find some source of income. Like there's, gig economy, freelance, there's different things you can do. But in the meantime, like really, really being diligent about your budget, really being thoughtful around the spending piece, and doing certainly, yeah, just it's going to take some diligence on your end, but if that's what you want, go for it, right? You have to make it work. And I know for me too, like remember too, on the, I guess, the student loan point, like there is a grace period. So after you graduate, you do have 6 months before that bill kicks in. So just some things to account for. So it's it's different for whoever, whatever your situation is. And if you're happy to talk offline, I'm happy to give you some ideas, but there's some general thoughts at least.
Yeah, and I'm jumping off of that. From the career advising standpoint, it's not uncommon that people will find like a part-time role even while they're in their job search before they even have an offer, because you don't know. A job search can last a solid couple of months, and that doesn't mean that anything's wrong. You know, of course, you'll probably want to check in with a career counselor, make sure that your documents are up to snuff, that your interview skills are ready to go. But you know, a job search can last 3 to 6 months, and that's not unusual, especially in a time where the market is tighter as it is now, although better than it was last year. So working a part-time role or getting a summer position just to sort of float you in between, if you're able to. A lot of people will sort of move back home to live with family if that's an option, or move in with where they can find lower cost housing. And so those would be other ideas that I would throw out there as well, if that's a situation that would be helpful for you. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat or the Q&A. So if anybody has them, please do send them in, because we do have a solid, 6 minutes left. Oh, Vinny has a question. Vinny, why don't you just ask this one out loud, actually?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was pretty curious to hear like Tracy's perspective on like with coffee and soda, like as we start grinding more after college, like coffee might become a habit. Like my parents drink it every morning. But any like good maybe substitutes or ideas for like healthier ways that maybe like obviously water is good, but maybe like teas or like how those might affect your health. Yeah, just kind of like your perspective on that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. Coffee in and of itself isn't bad. And there's even some studies that, can you hear me? Yeah. Certain things, or coffee's healthy in a certain dose. Now, that being said, if we're talking about caffeine, if you're using it like to stay awake, that's not something I'd recommend. I would say maybe we need to make some tweaks in our lifestyle, get to bed earlier, whatever, work out the stress or whatever's going on, that, work on sleep hygiene as opposed to just trying to get caffeine. But cup of coffee every morning is fine. Obviously we add things to coffee. So, try not to overload with sugar, but a little bit of half and half, creamer, milk, a little bit of sugar, totally fine. Tea as well, same thing. Some teas have caffeine, obviously, some don't, herbal teas. So if people enjoy, the hot drink, I would say, especially coming out of college and maybe not having a job, or your first job, is getting used to maybe making it yourself instead of going to Starbucks every day. So that would bring in the budget thing. Certainly, not wanting to spend hundreds of dollars a month on coffee drinks. I wouldn't recommend that at all for the budget, but also just sometimes then there's other stuff in those drinks, if you're getting frappuccinos or things like that, that aren't necessarily recommended, but everything in moderation. So, but getting a Keurig, making coffee, making your own tea, using Starbucks and those other things for more social treats, things like that. Soda, it's sugar, also caffeine potentially, depending on what type of soda. Just moderation, but definitely mostly wanting to, drink water, 100% fruit juice, like a glass of orange juice in the morning. If you're not a coffee drinker or tea, but you want some kind of fluid that's different, it's not warm, but people are kind of get scared of drinking stuff that has, calories in it potentially, but I always say, a glass of 100% orange juice is good. There's vitamin C, it's fluid, staying hydrated. So again, just looking at it, if you're drinking 4 or 5 sodas a day, I would say, maybe working on a goal of cutting back and replacing some of that with water.
Laura, I'm curious if you can add your perspective of how, caffeine I know can sometimes exacerbate or, mimic symptoms of anxiety in the body. But then also I was thinking about just substances in general. In college, sometimes people get into habits with alcohol or maybe use drugs. And when you're out in your, grown-up life, that those patterns sometimes change, sometimes for the worse. And so could you just sound off on that a little bit from your perspective?
Yeah, definitely. The first question I ask students that come in with anxiety is, how much caffeine are you consuming? Because oftentimes people are in a habit of consuming it that they aren't even aware how much it can actually exacerbate anxiety you have, or lead to causing anxiety or even those like panicky symptoms, the heart fluttering, the like, too much jittery energy. So, I think like Tracy said, keeping it in, moderation, or if you are more prone to anxiety, like cutting it out or even limiting it even more and just kind of watching that. But then, yes, of course, when we're stressed, like sometimes we can kind of go overboard on some, habits that leads to problematic stuff, alcohol, drugs, overspending. Like we all kind of seek these pleasure centers if we're feeling depressed or down or stressed. And doing that sometimes isn't going to be a problem, but oftentimes then it's triggering those kind of dopamine receptors in your brain of like, oh, I can only feel good if I'm doing this, or if I'm drinking, or if I'm needing caffeine to sustain my energy the whole day. And those are just little, like, kind of pay attention to those. Like, does it mean that you have a huge problem? No, but should you be kind of aware of how you're using those things, and wanting it to serve you rather than relying it kind of on like a crutch, or kind of relying on it to feel good? Those would be maybe kind of, little flags to check in with yourself.
Thank you very much for that. I think we have this one last question that came in from an anonymous attendee, so we see you. Where can we find financial literacy resources on campus? And Gina, you mentioned that you often speak to Marquette students on this topic. Do you have any upcoming events that you're speaking at? Because maybe we have a taker.
Yeah, for sure. So I was thinking about where you can find the resources on campus, and Grace, if you have anything to add, please hop in, because it's been a little while since I was a student. But I will say, at least especially like if you have student loan questions, like during your exit interviews, you're talking to the bursar's office, and then you can really work through like your options on, do you take 10-year standard repayment? Do you do income based? Do you use pay, repay? Do you have forgiveness opportunities? Like a lot of those specific student loan questions, I know you can at least get some thoughts or during your exit interview when you're leaving. So that's one thing to keep in mind. As far as I know, unless things have changed, there aren't like personal finance classes on campus, which is why we get called in. So I am speaking at Marquette next week. I will be at the Marquette Engineering, the Senior Design Engineering class. So I will be there. And we do it for the other colleges too. And I can't say I do a lot of like general events. It really is more specific to like college or graduating class. And the engineers, we're talking more about their benefits, and because they sometimes have a higher starting salary, whereas the PT students were really getting granular on student loans because they're grad students, and so there's a lot more to navigate there. So but one thing I guess I'll just toss out there too is just like I do, we do this for the engineering, and the students will be doing it for next week, but Marquette alum, like I'm happy to talk to anyone and, do a consultation. It's free. It's nothing you have to pay for, but, sit down with you for 30 minutes and help answer your questions individually. Sometimes it's the best way to go through that is just to like kind of understand your specific situation, because a lot of the things that we've been talking about today are like general and like good rules of thumb, but it's not applicable to everyone, right? Saying you were talking earlier about like, hey, my experience in DC was a little different, because you didn't have to worry about your loans, and so some opportunities that afforded you, which is awesome, right? And but also like DC's a really expensive city, so I'm still up against that as well, right? So everybody's got a little different situation. But also too, and I'm sure there'll be some follow-up from this panel here today, but I've also got plenty of like Excel sheets and resources that and like white papers if people are looking for some more reading material, and some things to look at. And also, there are good resources online, like NerdWallet is one of my favorites when it comes to credit and like figuring out what credit cards you should get. So there's some good stuff online, but like with anything, there are definitely you want to, and everything that you're reading, especially on finance, you evaluate with a critical eye, because there's a lot of stuff out there that is not great advice, but hopefully that helps answer the question, anonymous attendee.
Yes, and I was thinking, I believe there actually is a personal finance class. You'll have to check me on this, but I believe the College of Business does have a personal finance class.
Right on.
I've done a presentation in it once or twice. I don't know if it's offered every semester, but I think the opportunity might exist. So check that out, see if you can fit it into your schedule. It is registration week, if I'm not mistaken. So very topical advice, everybody. Well, we have run through our hour and 15 minutes. This has been such an interesting and productive conversation. So I really want to thank all of the panelists for being here and for sharing your expertise. It was really great to listen and just as the facilitator, and I hope that our audience also appreciated it. So tomorrow, anybody who is attending this, you'll receive an email, you'll get the survey again, just so that you can, again, give your opinion on this event, give us advice for next time we do it. And then I'll also be sending out this recording as well. And if any of the panelists want to, open up their email inbox to anybody, I can also pass along that contact information. So feel free to reach out to me, and I will just once again thank everybody for their time. And I wish everybody a wonderful evening, and congratulations to all of these graduates. I wish you nothing but the best in your future ventures. All right, bye everybody. Have a great night. Thank you.